Good evening and welcome into Two-Man Game here on ClavesOnline.com. I'm Matthew Roccio. That is my co-host, Bob Ramsey, and we're here to talk a little basketball. In fact, we got a lot of basketball to talk today because things are happening, not just the NBA playoffs, but plenty of other news around the sport of basketball. I got to welcome in my co-host, though, Bob Ramsey, before we get started. Rammer, how are you doing today?
Good to see you, Rocc.
Great to see you as well. And let's talk a little basketball. We got to jump in a little bit. The school that you're repping right now on the chest had some moves in the last 36 hours. The St. Louis Billikens getting two big men. One of them is a class of 23 from Europe, Stef Van Brussel, who has been playing in Germany. He's a Dutchman, 6'10", 250 pounds, so obviously a young player, but gives you some of the size that you obviously didn't have on the roster coming into this year. And then earlier today, the transfer from Tulsa, Tim Dolger, 6'7", 220 pounds, 10.2 points, 5.3 rebounds per game this past year for Tulsa. Also shot the three pretty well for his size. Obviously, we just talked on Tuesday about Rammer, St. Louis needing to get some size there in the front court, and right out of the gate, a young player but a big player in SVB, and then a nice, good, versatile four-man in Dolger.
Yeah, I've not seen any of them play, but the Billikens like them. So you have a 7-footer now in the fold, a 6'10" kid the young man from the Netherlands, who I guess ostensibly takes the place of Brock Weiss, who decommitted and went to Creighton. And then the kid from Tulsa, again, I think the Bills might still be a little thin when it comes to conference play, but who knows? This might be the group that all really clicks together and dominates the boards. I haven't seen them play. I don't know. But the Billikens like them, or they wouldn't have signed them. And it looks like the roster is being close to filled out.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, too, that that the new assistant coach, Chris Harriman, is obviously has the European connections, and everyone's talking about this news is pretty much giving Harriman a lot of credit for it. So right out of the gate, you make a move for a new coach, kind of change up the staff a little bit because you had some other moves. He has the European connections, and right out of the gate, one of the connections pays off. So you like to see that already for the SLU in the moves for St. Louis.
And I haven't talked to Chris. I'll try and talk to him before we go back on and find out. And it doesn't really matter, but I know fans get caught up into that, like who recruited whom. Typically, you'll have a coach kind of make the contact, and if there seems to be interest, that's when the staff comes and gets involved, and the head coach works as the closer. So really, no matter who made the initial contact, it's a team effort.
Absolutely. And let's move on a little bit from St. Louis basketball, talk a little bit about the NBA. Before we get into the games that have happened and will be happening later today, I wanted to talk about the news that hit from the NBA earlier today. And it's that not that they named the Hustle Award winner and Marcus Smart, congratulations to him, but it was the firing or dismissal, I guess is how they're calling it up in Milwaukee, of Mike Budenholzer from the Milwaukee Bucks. Rammer, fascinating note there with this firing now, and with Nick Nurse last week. 3 of the last 4 title winners in the NBA have fired their head coach, Frank Vogel, with the Lakers obviously being the other one. Just, what have you done for me lately in the NBA? Not a great turnaround for Mike Budenholzer, obviously losing to an 8 seed as a 1 seed, but a really rough turn there for Milwaukee. They still have the roster. It just seems like they felt like they needed a change in culture.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not really the coach's fault. You won a title, right? You had it work, and then things just can start to get loose and frayed. And, one agent's talking to a player and he's talking to the management, and animosity can develop. And I'm not saying in any given, I'm just saying that's an example. After championships, it's hard to keep things together. That's why we make such a big deal out of repeat champions, right? But it does seem pretty quick for a coach who you not only liked enough to hire, loved that he won you a title. No, not so much.
And it's just, there's so many things this year that have really, we're going to talk about the Lakers here in a minute and talk about things that have kind of undermined my belief in basketball. But like Budenholzer's so crazy because you watch what he's able to do in Atlanta, and you're like, okay, this guy's a good coach. Anytime you can get a team to be greater than the sum of its parts, you are a good coach, in my opinion.
I agree.
And he did that, obviously. And then when he goes up to Milwaukee, and he immediately improves on what Jason Kidd did there. And I thought, well, that shows the difference between, in my opinion, a coach who is average or below average, in my opinion, or a coach that is above average. Is you can take what a coach was doing, and you can improve on it immediately in the first year. And we saw that with the Bucks and Budenholzer to the point where they won a championship. And so it does seem a little quick to me. The Raptors move with Nick Nurse also seemed very quick. In the same vein, again, they're one of the last 4 NBA champions, and they're firing their head coach. So it's just an interesting move here. It wouldn't shock me if Nick Nurse is the coach of the Milwaukee Bucks, within the next month or so, with everything going down in Houston, the way it went down with Ime Udoka popping up there instead of Nick Nurse. And so it just seems like a quick move from the Bucks. I thought that he had brought Giannis to a different level, and maybe the thought simply with the Bucks was that he brought him to the next level, but he couldn't take him to another one where you're consistently, in the conference finals. And if that's your thought process, you're gonna have to find one hell of a coach to take you there.
Here's the thing. You're trying to be logical and trying to figure out based on the limited knowledge that we have. It could have been somebody got crossways in the hallway with an executive who didn't like it. I mean, something that ridiculous could start a snowball of ill will inside an office. I'm not saying that's what happened there, but we've seen those kinds of things happen. Look at the old St. Louis Rams and the paranoia that ran through the hallways there. Look at Mike Schilt with the St. Louis Cardinals. Get crossways with the Golden Boy hitting coach. He's fired, and then another year later, the hitting coach walks away. I mean, it doesn't have to make sense. And usually there'll be something in there that you'll go, oh, are you kidding me? That's what happened. So a lot of these ones that are hard to figure, there's something behind the scenes, and a lot of it starts out really small and gets out of proportion.
Yeah, and I think if you're a Bucks fan, or if you're a Bucks analyst, something like that, I'm sure there's 15 little nitpicky things that you have throughout the season that you can be like, well, when you make those kind of decisions, you got to fire a guy, and that's just kind of the nature of over analysis. But I mean, Budenholzer's a good coach. How much does the difference between a good coach and a great coach matter in the NBA when it's so superstar dominant? That's I think those are the questions that they were asking themselves in that front office, and they came down to the conclusion that a new coach can take us to a different level. And we'll see if that's true with the Bucks next year. They got the roster, like I said. Now we'll see if the coach can do more with it than they expected. And now let's talk about some teams that are still trying to win a championship, a couple that have before, but trying to maybe add another one in the cupboard. The big one is going to be tonight's game 2 between the Lakers and the Golden State Warriors. A couple nights ago, right before we talked, as I have always been this year and many previous years, not very big on the Lakers. I thought that the Warriors combination of Draymond Green and Kevon Looney could do a pretty good job. Now, that's not why necessarily they lost. I thought they did a good job overall in their own end. Kevon Looney also had 23 rebounds. I know Anthony Davis had 20, but Kevon Looney right there with him, including a couple offensive rebounds. But the bottom line is that Anthony Davis, as he has been since he entered the league, when he plays the 5 and he plays it consistently, he's one of the best, most disruptive, dominant players in the NBA. And what you saw on Tuesday night was an Anthony Davis playing the 5 at the absolute height of his ability. And you saw late in the game with his block on Stephen Curry and the way he was able to change so many shots late, including just dominating the paint and forcing so much of the Warriors into the perimeter offense. I just think that he absolutely showed out. It's hard to beat a top 5 player when they're playing like a top 5 player. It's hard to beat a team when they have 2 top 5 players playing like top 5 players. And that's what the Lakers have right now. I still don't think they're going to be able to do this for the 6-7 games they're going to need to beat the Warriors. But as of right now, I clearly don't have a great read on this Lakers team.
Our friend Joe Davis of 590 The Fan had a stat, and I trust it to be correct, is that Anthony Davis is great in odd-numbered games and awful in even-numbered games.
Really?
That means nothing to me. That means nothing to me as a game analyst and X's and O's, but it should mean something to those of you, Rocc, I'm looking right at you, that gamble.
Yep.
Because gamblers go on trends. I'm trying to figure out X's and O's and substitutions and lineups and, how we're going to switch on this guy. But that's a really interesting trend. Yeah, but it goes to your point. It made me think of repeating Joe's stat, your point about Davis's uneven play.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes he just doesn't show up, and this is what we've been expecting, and you see glimpses of it, and that's why I think last year's Lakers season and in the first half of this Lakers season was so frustrating because you just knew if Anthony Davis is healthy and he's bought in, he is a top 5 player in the game, especially when he's playing at the 5 and he's playing defense the way he is right now. And now you're seeing it again. The Warriors are themselves to blame, much like the Phoenix Suns in their series so far with the Nuggets, which we talked about on Tuesday. They're not getting into the paint enough and trying to score at the rack enough. They're being a little bit too complacent with their outside shots. And then, of course, I think the thing is that Jordan Poole didn't have the season anybody expected, and he's been up and down in the playoffs, and I can't explain what his thought process was taking that shot with 6 seconds left, considering
Coach, I'm hot.
He wasn't 2 possessions earlier, and this bothers me so much. If you're an NBA,
stop. Coach, I'm due.
It's the
players think.
I think you're right, but it also has to be the most annoying thing to me because are they not thinking he caught it was 2 possessions before that. The Warriors had gone down by 5 or 4, after this big Steph Curry 3. The Lakers come back. The Warriors are now down, and it was the most predictable thing in the world. He catches the ball on the right wing slot, and he does 2 kind of lazy between the legs dribbles. And as he's going through the second one, I'm like, oh, God, he's going to pull up. And he did. He immediately pulled up. And I'm like, if I'm guessing it, I guarantee you the defender's thinking it. And he was right in his kitchen, and he missed the shot. And it's a bad possession. And so I don't know why Jordan Poole is in that situation. Klay Thompson was clearing through the paint to the opposite 3-point line. I don't know if they were trying to run something there for him. Again, there were 6 seconds left on the clock. But it's hard to win a championship against 2 Hall of Famers when your role player, your guy who's supposed to be a splash player here and there, decides that it's, main character night.
Well, Klay or Steph should have ran over and grabbed the ball from him. Ran all the way to him and grabbed it. Stole the ball from their own guy. So I blame them. The other thing is, and I know you don't like to talk about it, everybody who's an NBA guy that I talk to don't like to talk about it, but they can't, they being the Warriors, can't have a 20 free throw deficit and expect
that too. Yeah, exactly.
And so teams are who they are. They don't get to the line much. Lakers get to the line a lot. The teams are who they are. You've just got to squeeze that discrepancy a little bit. Can you get to the line 2 or 3 more times? Can you keep them off the line 2 or 3 more times? But 20 more makes. That won't work.
Yeah, and I think and this kind of calls back to the Lakers or to the Nuggets Suns series. By the way, Game 3 on Friday, going to be interesting to see how that series looks with those guys getting so many days of rest. But it's crazy because for years, and you and our good friend Earl Austin have been right at the forefront of it, of saying for years that the mid-range shot is not dead. And for years, while everyone's been talking about dunks and three-pointers, the mid-range has been there for championship-winning teams like the Raptors, the Cavaliers, and the Warriors. Kawhi Leonard, Kyrie Irving, Steph Curry, and Kevin Durant. Those guys are mid-range artists, and they won championships doing it in a league that was going away from it. And now, seemingly as the league kind of started to accept it more, it's now causing a problem with 2 of the best teams in the NBA, which is the Warriors and the Suns are passing up opportunities to drive the lane and draw fouls to take mid-range jumpers. And again, it's weird because now the math kind of is breaking the nerds' way and saying You guys are shooting 42% on twos. If you're shooting 50%, you're golden. But that 8% is a big difference, and that's been why the Nuggets and the Suns have lost so many points on the margin in these series.
Well, it's real simple. And by the way, I love stats, and I love the guys who keep stats and think about stats. But you can't live and die by the stats, or you will die by the stats. You've got to here's the thing, make shots. Make your shots.
Yeah, that's true.
And if they're guarding the three and you force threes, you're not going to make very many unless you're Steph Curry.
Yeah.
But if they give you the middle, there's not a guy in the league that can't hit a high percentage of 15-footers. There's just not. They've been doing it their whole lives. So it became as teams started to over evaluate and estimate the advanced metrics. All right, we'll all shoot threes. Well, what happened? The defense went out to the 3-point line, then guarded the middle because layups were still legit and dunks, right? And what did that create on the floor? A vacuum in the middle.
Yep.
So if they're guarding the three, I'll take the open shot in the middle. It's the metrics people. We're seeing it with the St. Louis Cardinals baseball team. We're seeing it all over sports. They're trying to kill the humanity of the game and the logic of the game. The numbers are supposed to be logical, but they're killing the common sense of the game.
Variables terrify us, Rammer. We're scared of them.
Well said.
They terrify us. But just what I'm saying is, watch tonight in the Lakers-Warriors game. Keep an eye on just one big thing: the Warriors' aggressiveness at getting to the paint, and because you have to consider the other side of it. Why are they so afraid of Anthony Davis, and why is he essentially creating a bubble around the paint that they refuse to drive into during the game? Just watch those two things. It's going to be a great little counterbalance, because if they try for it and they get him in foul trouble, it could really run things their way in kind of an avalanche. Or he could have 4 blocks in the first half, and all of a sudden it's an 8-point lead the Lakers' way, and things keep rolling.
Maybe this goes into Joe Davis's stat. You're going to attack him. He has a bad game, as predicted. Then the Golden State wins because of it. It'd be interesting.
And then the same thing on Friday with the Suns. Are they being aggressive, or are they settling for mid-range jumpers, especially because we know Jokic isn't a good defender? It's always interesting. Some people wonder about defense in the NBA. Just focus on one thing tomorrow night if you're watching the Nuggets-Suns game. Where does Jokic go when they run the pick and roll? They're going to play him in this drop, and the question is, are the Suns going to be able to kill him in the drop, or are they going to be able to get away with it? That's going to be a big differentiator in that game. One final thought really quickly about last night's game between the 76ers and the Celtics. That game made no freaking sense, Rammer. You have Embiid, who obviously would have been playing that game if it was a regular season game. He clearly wasn't right. You have Jason Tatum picking up 3 early fouls. That changes his minutes. When he comes into the game, the 76ers actually cut the lead down to the lowest. It got the entire game back down to 18. Tatum finishes with 19 minutes played, 1 for 7 for 7 points. And again, the bad game on the other side for Joel Embiid because he's still a little bit injured. That game made no sense, and somehow all of that adds up to a 40-point Celtics win.
It was really crazy. And maybe the key thing there is Embiid being hampered, and maybe it makes Eric Spoelstra still the best coach in the league, keeping Jimmy Butler out. Maybe they keep Embiid out, get him healthier so he can really be who he is. Yeah,
and really the rest days are fascinating because, again, that game's last night. 76ers and Celtics play again tomorrow. But, again, the Suns and Nuggets are sitting on 3 days rest. So it's going to be interesting to see how those rest days kind of change the complexion of those two series in the East and the West, respectively. Yeah. Rammer, we've gone long. Me and you have to talk a little baseball after this, so we're going to wrap up here on Two Man Game. We're going to be back after the weekend to talk more basketball here on ClaibsOnline.com. Obviously, some incredible games. Heat and Knicks tied up at 1 apiece. Again, we're going to get Game 2 between the Lakers and the Warriors. And by the time we're talking again next week, one of these series could be completely different. And for all I know, the Lakers are up 4-0, and I'm very, very sad. So we'll talk about that more on the other side. Before we go, though, Rammer, please tell everybody about our friends over at Royal Banks of Missouri.
Royal Banks of Missouri, over 60 years serving you. And serving is what they do. Better service means better banking at Royal Banks. Give them a call, 314-212-1500. Royal Banks, member FDIC, and equal housing lender.
Thank you so much, Rammer. I'll see you on Daily Cards Live, and everybody else, have a great day.
As one of St. Louis's fastest growing companies and largest private companies, St. Louis Acura is proud to serve you and remains committed to becoming better than ever for you. As new Acuras become more available every day, we are not backing down from selling 100% more quality pre-owned vehicles than ever before. We want customers that appreciate our friendly, outgoing team and our award-winning service because at St. Louis Acura, we are better than ever for you.